Hello, YouTube. It's episode 8. So I met Dan on the internet years ago. He actually used to be a StarCraft streamer, but now you mostly find him in his garage making rugs. Knowing what StarCraft players are like, this made perfect sense to me. So me and Sunny decided to take a trip up north to visit our friend Dan, but not without stopping at Bravo Farms, a place with really cool signs on the wall that are about beers. We ordered food and went outside and noticed that there were several cats roaming around. Unfortunately, there was a lot of misbehaving children running around frightening the cats, and quite frankly, I hope they get fed to the pigs. And since of course this was a barbecue restaurant, the pigs got fed back to me. It was strange to think that this petting zoo / barbecue restaurant would mean that this pig would see us eat his friends and family. Well, that's not the pig, but you know what I'm referring to. That's not the pig either, that's a goat. I was talking about the pig earlier in the video. I forgot how fun petting zoos are, and if you haven't gone to one in a while, I definitely suggest getting near some animals. The goats here had magnetic teeth and were constantly getting stuck to metal. At this point, I had lost my camera cap and didn't know where it was. We also had a plan to go to the aquarium on Sunday, so to see bonus land animals today made me very happy. One of my first memories of an animal is when I was in kindergarten. We went on a field trip to a farm. We were given the opportunity to milk a cow. I remember finding it absolutely disgusting and refusing to do it. I also refused to dissect animals in high school. I think a lot of things just gross me out. This goat had a really long neck full of secrets. I'm very blind, but lucky for me, Sunny was able to find my camera cap. I had to pee, so I went into the gift shop, and that's because the bathroom was hidden within the gift shop. Probably so you would see something you want to buy. But what I loved in this store was this wall of so many things made of glass, and I just imagined the sound that it would make if they all fell on the floor at once. It makes me sad that souvenir shops lose the charm that they used to have when you were a child. I thought about the torture my body would face on the toilet if I consumed this entire bin of cheeses. It was getting dark and we were there for about an hour, so I decided that we ought to hit the road, because now it was finally time to see our friend Dan. There was a lot of things that I already knew about Dan, but I knew that this weekend I would begin to learn a lot more. You see, I am always collecting information. I learned that Dan's mother had a fascination with zebras and likes to collect them. My mom does the exact same thing with turtles. What is your mother's comfort animal? And how did they know which animal to pick? Every rug in this video was made by Dan. I just want you to have that information now because I will be showing a lot of them. Dan decided to take 2 boar steaks out of the fridge and begin to prepare them for our dinner. And a bonus fact is that Dan used to work at a butcher shop. Dinner was served and we had a conversation about how there's not that many trick-or-treaters anymore. It's honestly really sad to think about how trick-or-treating is kind of phasing itself out. I explored Dan's home and I was very excited to see that it was filled with artwork. I think every kind of art there is brings a lot of life to a home or a room. And I'm not just saying that because that's how I make money. Or maybe I am, how would you ever know? There was a quilt adorning the hallway that had a bunch of squares on it. And some of these squares included Dan's father's Halloween costumes that he made from stuff around the house. I was particularly fond of the Sisyphus one. But now it's time to serious business, okay? We got into Dan's garage and we made a f***ing plan. So you may be confused about why we're gonna be making shirt rugs, and I'm gonna explain that later, I promise. But right now, Dan is laying down the law. He's telling us how it's gonna go down, he's telling us about string, he's telling us about yarn, he's telling us about rugs, and then Sunny stepped on a rake. We attended to Sunny's concussion, but unfortunately that wouldn't be the only medical emergency this weekend. Dan's a very interesting guy. I tried emulating his style of speaking to trick people in my Discord that I was actually him. Sunny put on a really stupid hat, but they said the person that sold it to them said that they were the only person that they've ever seen pull it off. We played with children's toys in the room connected to Dan's. He passed me a book to read but didn't mention that a dog would be dying by page 8. While I was trying to film this shot here, I accidentally dipped the flannel that Dan let me borrow into our dessert. I judged Dan for liking milk because I'm a hater. Another interesting thing about Dan is he knows a lot about the human body. He used to study it, but now he's busy crafting rugs. We woke up the next morning and had a wonderful breakfast. We were going to spend the entirety of the day working hard. So, it was time to design our shirts, and you're probably confused. You're probably wondering what the heck is up with the shirts. So basically, me, Dan, and Sunny are pretty obsessed with this show called I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson. And in one of the skits, there is a plot line basically about a store that sells very complicated patterned shirts that are very expensive. That's kind of the whole joke. You should watch it if you haven't. But anyways, we decided that we were going to each make our own Dan Flashes shirt. That's the name of the store, is Dan Flashes. So we're basically just a bunch of morons. So after we drew our little shirts on our little notepads, we decided to crawl into Dan's room, and he sat at the computer and made our shirt mock-ups on GIMP. It's like Photoshop, but free or something. It was absolutely critical for us to get these shirts right. Dan was making sure we took all the proper steps to make really cool shirts. Me and Sunny couldn't sit still or focus while Dan was sitting there hard at work. Dan is very logical. Dan is very reasonable. Dan is very analytical. He's also a perfectionist in a way that I respect. He even designed the big wooden thing that we're going to be making the rugs on. I was glad Dan was making it so easy for us to get this stuff planned out. But then I remembered that I also had to start planning out a painting, and then I remembered a can that I saw the night before. To be specific, a box of cans of Spam. And then I got to thinking that this truly is the perfect size. This is exactly the amount of space that I can paint. It was just meant to be. Sunny started putting their outline on the cloth thingy, and I thought about how fun rakes are and how I don't get to use them. I was excited to use the rug gun, but I also had to make a little arrangement of what I wanted to paint. I collected a bunch of different things from this home to create the perfect scenery. As soon as I set up the painting, I then filled my rug outline out. I really wanted my rug to have a bunch of circles like a bowling alley floor. But then I had to get back to painting, so I taped off this little section so I wouldn't get any paint on the gold parts. Also, the first time I ever had Spam was like a year and a half ago-ish or something, and it was way better than I expected. So, the rug gun is a big deal. This is the machine that makes it all happen, and Dan was an incredibly effective teacher, giving us very clear instructions on the amount of pressure you have to put, which is actually way more pressure than you would imagine. I feel pressure a lot in life. Pressure to get more done. Pressure to make more money. Pressure to exercise. Pressure to find someone and get married. Pressure to respond. Pressure to forgive people. Pressure to forgive myself. But I think we're all just overthinking it, probably. Oops, only shaved one of my legs. But I think that's why I like this project we're doing at Dan's house. Because there's no pressure at all. We're just having a good time. And I think us being online friends has a lot to do with that. The only thing you can ever do with online friends, truly, besides playing video games or whatever, is talk. So if you find people to have good conversations with, they're probably very similar to you. And it's always nice to feel understood. All of my closest friends I've met on the internet. I felt like we were in a time void when we were in this garage. It's funny that you make the rug on one side, but it comes out on the other side. And also, the can of Spam that I'm painting, I decided that if I ever sell it, the person who buys it has to sign a contract promising that they'll never open it. I took a break to ponder on the floor. Sometimes I just need to think really hard, and being under tables makes me feel comfortable. But then when I looked up, I noticed somebody, and it looked like their hair would slick back really good. My pondering station got very popular very quickly. Time was starting to tick faster and faster, and we had to make sure that we glued the rugs by tonight so they had time to dry. Dan was clearly flexing with the immaculate design of his t-shirt. Dan's mom really emphasized that Dan's was the best out of all of ours several times. I appreciated her honesty, and objectively she was correct. It was actually around this point that my camera said low battery. Because I'm an idiot, I didn't pack a spare battery or the charger. I genuinely don't know why I did something so careless. It's not like I forgot. I remember thinking, yeah, whatever. I can promise that I will never do that again. So I decided to be very stingy with what I recorded after this because I didn't want to waste my battery. Dan was finishing up his rug while I was finishing up my painting. And then, of course, Dan proceeded to ponder. But while everything was rainbows and butterflies, I had no idea what was going to happen to me tonight. I had no idea what the future held, and I would not end up at the aquarium tomorrow. Dan graciously filled my holes for me while I finished my painting as quickly as possible. We finished gluing and then went to bed. And then I started to feel this very strange pain in my stomach while I was just laying there for hours. I tossed and turned until 4 in the morning, and that's when I decided to wake Sunny up. I tried to go to the bathroom because I thought this was a skill issue. It felt like there were feral raccoons living inside my chest. Soon Sunny and Dan were watching me on the floor, writhing in pain like a little freak. Dan looked over at me and said,
"If it gets worse, I'm taking you to the hospital."
I said, okay, fine, Dan, but I knew that was a lie. And then I told Holdy to get out of the shop because he wasn't actually there and he was ruining it. We planned to go to the aquarium at 8 in the morning, and I fell asleep around 7 a.m. So I just knew that there's no way I would have been able to enjoy it on 1 hour of sleep. And it worked out in a weird way because we ended up spending most of this day doing rug stuff anyways. Like, I don't even know how we could have done both. So this part of making the rug I think is honestly the most fun. But I love scissors. I love cutting stuff. I like shears. I like the shears in Minecraft. Genuinely, look how ethereal this process looks. We had to wear masks because my breath was really bad that day. And also because of all the dust that can kill you. We have finally completed our amazing rugs, and customers immediately stormed into the store, dreaming about buying a complicated hoping shirt, they could stare deeply into the meticulous patterns that adorned these shirts. Society, getting lost in patterns so complicated, online friendship, complicated the more writhing on the floor, internet, writhing on the floor. And just like that, we did what we came here to do. We came here to make rugs, particularly ones that are very complicated. And while the t-shirt rugs were complicated, what wasn't complicated was our friendship. When you're around cool people, it should feel easy, and that's exactly what it felt like this weekend. Besides the writhing on the floor, I had an exceptional weekend. But it was time to go home now, and I had to get us home safely. We said goodbye to the city of Gilroy, and Sunny ended up missing their flight. I didn't even take off the tape when I was at Dan's house because I was so scared of not having enough recording footage to get all the rug business. I poured 2% milk all over this can of Spam and smeared it around with a brush before I decided to peel off the tape. Then I looked at it in all its glory and realized that I had created my very own can of Spam. The zebras honoring Dan's mother, the Diet Coke honoring Sunny, the yarn honoring Dan. I meant the zebra and the giraffe. The books honoring Dan's dad. Must I remind you all that you can make anything in the world that you want to make. And just know that I am waiting for you to get started.
No, you need to walk onto it. It looks too suspicious. Just to walk.
I'm gonna walk onto you.